This is Auto Marketing Now with Brian Pasch.
Welcome to Auto Marketing Now, and on today's show we're going to be talking about the sales process, generating more showroom visits, and how do we track those showroom visits more effectively. Our special guest is CEO Clint Burns from the Next Up. So let's get started with today's show. I'd like to welcome a special guest on today's show, Clint Burns, CEO of the Next Up. Clint, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian.
Well, first of all, for viewers who are watching today's program, we've only known each other a little over a year.
Yes.
Tell viewers today a little bit about the Next Up and when it was founded.
So the Next Up was founded about 8 years ago. It's a retail sales process that allows the salespeople to be efficient and effective, meanwhile giving the dealership an exact count of what's going on at the dealership at all times.
Well, we first met each other because I had a client, general manager, Lithia Toyota of Abilene, Keenan Pyatt, called me up and he said, Brian, I have to hire another 8 or 9 salespeople. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he said, I installed this new product and I didn't realize that I was missing so many logged ups. He's an excellent operator, but well, without a sales accountability process for the showroom visits, he was missing logging, well, a significant number of ups. Is this a common thing when people turn on your software, your processes? What does the average dealer see in an increase in logged showroom visits?
Sure. And Keenan's a great client, obviously, and a great performer, but yes. Ultimately he was tracking about 640 to 650 customers logged into his CRM, and we produced in the first 30 days 1,100 actually in his CRM. We find that typically the dealerships are only logging 50 to 60% of the actual guests that are hitting the lots today.
So when you read the trade magazines and watch obviously CBT News, you know that some of the larger dealer groups are going out publicly and saying that they are going to transform the retail process, get customers in and out under an hour. But is the real challenge of our industry is that we don't have a trackable sales process?
Sure. I mean, our business has always been the way it is, and everyone's trying to focus on this guest experience, but without a retail sales process, it's hard to actually have the guest experience that everyone's looking for.
And without having a retail sales process, you're not going to get the KPIs and the data to know if you're hitting your benchmarks.
Definitely. I mean, they have no idea because they're only tracking it based on what the salespeople choose to log into the CRM.
So let's roll back the clock. What we're really talking about is a product that will give the dealer an opportunity to move from an open floor to a managed floor. Clint, what's the downside of the open floor? Meaning just having people waiting around. Doesn't the most aggressive salesperson, whether they're the right salesperson or not, see the most customers?
Actually, when we look at the sales board at the end of the month, we think that the salesperson that sold the most cars is the best salesperson, but we don't know ultimately how many customers it took to get to that number. It's kind of like a batting average. Ultimately, the most aggressive guy could be talking to the most customers and brooming the most customers through the store.
So Clint, without a managed showroom process, won't salespeople be prejudging consumers on the lot and really missing some valuable sales opportunities?
Definitely. I mean, salespeople, if they perceive that the customer's not a deal, they're not going to log it into the customer database.
And, recent research from DME Automotive has shown us that, well, consumers are visiting less dealerships. So isn't your product the perfect antidote for consumer behavior visiting less showrooms, making sure that that showroom visit is fully tracked?
Definitely. I mean, we're proving it across the nation as well as other countries with you as well. Ultimately, salespeople aren't accountable for what's going on the lots today.
So let's explain how the product works and who's using the product. So if I'm a dealer who has a open floor, meaning, hey, guys are just and gals are hanging by the front door, looking at the lot, running up to people, hoping that they're getting logged in. How does your product specifically transform the showroom experience?
Sure. So what we do is we come in with the guidelines of how the store wants to run, specify depending on how many salespeople they have, how many people they want covering the floor. That way you have the necessary salespeople covering the floor, freeing up the rest of them to go focus on follow-up and working the tools that they have to get more customers back in on the higher closing ratio with appointments.
Great. So when a salesman is in your software, he's going to get a notification on his cell phone, at his desk, at his computer, that he's the next up. He needs to get up into the front of the showroom. How is he notified?
Sure, and ultimately, because we're 100% cloud-based, they can watch on any phone, tablet, or computer in the world at all times live and know exactly with confidence that they can work their follow-up tools, but never miss their opportunity for a fresh guest.
Great, and so when they're told they're the next up, they go up, they take their position, and when they see a customer, that opportunity is automatically logged into the CRM, is that correct?
Well, yeah, ultimately what happens is it's a little bit of a self-policing mode. The salesperson that's in first position is watching the lot. The person in second position is watching the person in first. So the person in first position goes out and greets the guests like they're normally doing, but the person in second position goes and marks that salesperson in first position with that guest.
Got it.
It's the most accurate way of counting how many customers are coming in today.
Great. And so since that salesperson, the person that was first up, is talking with a customer, we don't know who that person is yet, but what you do is you insert an open record for that salesperson in the CRM, requiring them to fill out that information. Is that correct?
Definitely. We can feed to all major CRMs an open record, then it holds them accountable to a one-to-one relationship of how many customers are coming on the lot versus what's getting put in the CRM.
So if a dealership had a problem where they knew they were getting 100 visits in a weekend, only 50 were really being logged, in your system they'll have 100 CRM records of showroom visits, maybe 50 of them in the old school would have complete information. Now they have 100, and I assume after a few days of being held accountable, the salesmen know they have to complete that up record in the CRM.
Yeah, within a few hours, the salespeople are going to know that they're accountable. The other thing is that we have the alerting to the management. So when a salesperson gets a guest, we instantly can alert the managers that they're with a guest. So most stores that are trying to do manager introductions early and often are now can have that handled and be taken care of right away. Great.
So what we're getting is a one-to-one relationship of showroom visit to CRM log entries. We have a 100% notification to managers who want to know when a salesman is with a new customer for introductions. And then, well, before that day ends, the managers could make sure and require that all of those CRM records are fully up to date with whatever the conversation was, if the car was sold, or if they're coming back with their trade. What has this done to dealers in their ability to sell more cars with existing opportunities?
Well, first and foremost, we're going to slow the salespeople down within the process. We're not ultimately slowing down the transaction time, but we're slowing them down to do the proper steps of sale, which in turn increases the closing ratio and the gross at the same time. Additionally, we're going to see a minimum of 20% increase in the CRM at all the stores, which in turn obviously sells more cars.
Right. So if a dealership has a great CRM process like Keenan had, really this was a boon for him because now he had an extra few hundred customers in the CRM that could go through his sales process.
Definitely, and a lot more additional information for the BDC to work on as well.
Right, and I think if dealers are truly looking to create a more Apple-like customer experience, a seamless, or as Google would call it, a frictionless sales transaction, they really have to make sure that at the beginning of that process, things are logged.
Definitely, I mean, but they also have to have a process in place, even without our system, a documented retail sales process of how they're going to handle all the incoming guests that are coming in today.
So let's talk about what's the hottest topic in the news, right? Changing the customer experience, creating that wow factor, making it easier for consumers to buy a car. So you've been telling me you have some new updates to the product. Obviously, people who are familiar with a managed up system or even your product say, okay, Clint, this has done a great job, but when they go into the finance office, do we have transparency on how long the sales process took and then how long the F&I process took? What are you doing to give your customers more visibility on those stages within the dealership to, well, give them the data to create that better customer experience?
Yeah, great. We're actually launching a few things at NADA where we're launching a finance department rotation, as well as our new live drive, which is actually live information of all test drives. We know how valuable the test drives are, obviously, and until now we never knew exactly if the salesperson took a guest or not. We'll now know geofencing the dealership. When a salesperson gets a guest, we know when they break the geofence, how fast they drove, what route they drove, if one route closes at a better rate or time-wise closes at a better rate, and know truly if the test drive is happening or not.
You know, it's so funny you bring this up about the test drive. I remember Patrick Kelly from Auto Loop was telling me he did a research report for one of his customers, and they have a call center, and they called back the people that had visited the showroom that day and didn't purchase. And he was telling me that something like 30 to 40% of the records that were marked with a test drive never happened, meaning when they asked the customer, were you taken on a test drive, the customer said no. And as soon as the sales team knew that the call center would be checking up all unsold showroom visits, well, of course, the data accuracy instantly improved. So for the first time, we're taking geofencing, and if that, I guess, salesperson's mobile phone leaves the geofence, we'll know that in that time period when they were with a customer, they were on a test drive.
Definitely, and how fast they drove and what route. The other thing is that we've always relied on the salesperson giving us that information, but what we find is typically salespeople are only test driving 56 to 60% of the customers that come in today. There's kind of an epidemic in our industry right now is that, you know, the consumer is spending 18 to 19 hours on the internet. They're coming into the lots, but they're asking for a specific model, maybe even a color with features, and the salespeople are assuming that they're already sold. So they're missing our biggest value builder, the test drive.
The test drive.
So let's step back for a moment and take a look at your value proposition to dealers. You are going to create a system that has accountability to log 100% or near 100% of the showroom traffic. You're going to be able to time that process, when it started, when it moved to F&I, did they do a test drive? You'll be able to see which of those opportunities turned into sales. So are we truly getting to a point where we're building a transparent sales funnel?
100%.
Wow. You know, Clint, as dealers are under pressure, margins are being compressed, competition's on the rise, is there any reason today that a dealer would still stay with an open floor? What's the counter argument? Obviously, you believe in a managed floor, a managed sales process. What do you have to say to dealers watching today's show that say, well, we've always had an open floor, that's the way we've done it, and we're making money? What do you have to say to those dealers?
Well, ultimately, I think that they're just fear of change. Every store that we put on, even if they were a little bit of fearful going into it, call us the day after being into it and saying, look, I never hear a page available sales rep to the showroom floor anymore, or they scream and holler because they see unattended guests out on the lot, and they see salespeople in their showroom actually making follow-up phone calls, getting customers back in with the higher closing ratio. So they're thrilled with the outcome.
You know, I'll just tell you one experience. I visited a dealership and there was 4 or 5 people sitting at a round table right by the entry doors. And it was hot out, so they were kind of standing inside or sitting in the air conditioning. And I said to one of the gentlemen, how long have you been sitting here? And he says, for an hour and a half. I said, has there been any customers? No. I said, well, why aren't you in the CRM? Why aren't you following up with tasks? And he honestly said, because I can't afford to miss the next up. Clint, for dealers watching who can identify with that story, how quickly can your product transform an open floor system to an effective managed sales process?
Well, typically it takes about 18 to 21 days for anything to become habit or culture forming. Okay. With the management involvement, obviously it is a management tool that they have to back. It's kind of like a gym membership. It's not enough just to join.
Right.
They'll have success within the first 30 days.
Great. Well, I know our shared customers are raving about the product, but you also mentioned some of the highest performing dealers in the country are using your tool. for dealers watching, what are some of the dealerships that have found great success using the Next Up?
Sure, we have dealerships that have as little as 5 sales reps on up to 50, and they're the stores obviously that everyone's heard of, the #1 Toyota dealership in the nation, the #1 Mercedes dealership in the world, so on and so forth.
So what a great portfolio of clients, and I couldn't be really more happy for your product in today's changing sales culture. We need to create that wow experience when people come into the dealership. We really need to close them when they come because, well, they're visiting less dealerships, and I really think that dealers need to check out your product and challenge the old ways of handling their showroom opportunities. Clint, if people wanted to learn more about your product, where do they go?
Definitely, they can go to our website at thenextup.com. They definitely could reach out to me at any time on my mobile phone direct, 714-366-2273, or obviously visit us at the NADA convention as well. We'll have a booth in the West Hall.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on today's shows. For dealers watching, I really encourage them to take a look at your product, because the only way we are going to stay relevant to today's consumers if we change that sales process, make it a great, seamless, frictionless experience. And I think your product is part of the future of automotive retail. So thanks again for coming. And now for today's marketing tip. On today's show, we learned from Clint Burns a better way to track showroom visits, but in the same vein, dealers are looking to track the influence of their marketing dollars on showroom visits as well. So let me give you 3 suggestions to better track how your marketing dollars are generating showroom visits. Number 1, phone numbers. Phone tracking is so important for today's online marketing strategy. Dealers have, well, sometimes been a little stingy in allocating the proper budget to track phone calls. Ladies and gentlemen watching today's show, the best way to get someone in your showroom is to speak with them on the phone. And the only way you're going to know what is generating the most phone calls is by using tracking numbers. Number 2, even though consumers are submitting less leads, when a lead is submitted to your website, well, the chances of you setting a showroom visit is really quite high. But if you're not using Google URL tracking and campaign codes, well, how are you going to know which marketing investments generated the lead? Please talk with your marketing vendors and make sure that they're using Google UTM tracking codes to identify all referral traffic to your website, so that when they submit a lead, you can give credit to the right marketing source. And lastly, chat. There are still some dealers today that are ignoring consumers who want to chat and start a conversation. Remember, it's that first impression that will really determine if a consumer will come to your dealership. Making sure that you have 24/7 chat, just a friendly voice to start a conversation, to answer some basic questions to show you care, can really influence more showroom traffic, because, well, their first touch with your website, their first questions were answered professionally. So if you're looking to handle your showroom traffic better, well, look into the Next Up. But if you're looking to determine which marketing investments are generating the most showroom traffic, you better have a stronger tracking strategy. And that's today's marketing tip. And now let's read this week's email grab bag question. An internet sales manager writes, Brian, there's a number of products on the market offering gift card incentives to consumers who visit the dealer's website. Are they really working to increase showroom visits? Well, this is a great question, because today we're talking all about tracking and, well, encouraging more consumers to visit the showroom. And actually, gift cards do appeal to to a wide number of consumers. They're used not just on automotive websites, but on department stores and music and shopping sites. So consumers are used to an enticement to come and, well, do an action. In a recent campaign that I was involved with, a dealer who was using Pandora advertising drove people to a landing page, and by using hook logic was able to secure dozens of highly qualified leads that if the gift card wasn't there, well, I don't really think they would have converted into a traditional lead form. So don't mistake these online gift cards as insignificant. Dealers need to drive more showroom visits. Consumers who visit the showroom convert at a higher percentage because they've done their research online. Whether you choose a $25 gift card or a $50 gift card, when you add up how many additional sales that you will generate from these gift card enticement programs, actually you will find that they're an excellent complement to your Google AdWords campaigns, to your social media campaigns, or to your Pandora advertising campaigns. It's another way to reach a finicky online shopper and get them into your dealership first. Ladies and gentlemen, if consumers are visiting less dealerships, you need to go the extra mile to get them into your dealership before a local competitor. An online gift card enticement is another strategy that's working at dealers across the country. If you have an email grab bag question, just submit it to the email address shown on the screen, and if we pick it on the show, well, you'll get a free copy of Mastering Automotive Digital Marketing, my latest book, the first textbook on digital marketing strategy for car dealers. So thank you for submitting your questions. Keep them coming, and we'll see you next week on Auto Marketing Now.
Thank you for watching this week's edition of Auto Marketing Now.